I feel that this is a familiar theme now, Brooke. Airlines are struggling. They're struggling to get staff. In the States, it feels like it's a pilot story. It's maybe an ATC story as well, added on top of that. Here in Europe, it's a ground handling story. But it's a familiar theme. When is this going to end? Are we getting any clues from Delta about how long this is going to last?
I mean, I think what they're signaling is that they don't necessarily know when it's going to end, and they expect operating costs to be elevated for a while. They are targeting less capacity, fewer flights. That seems to be the U.S. solution to this problem is, the way to curb disruption is just to put fewer planes in the air and, hope that the ones that they are flying do get to their destinations on time and without having their journeys canceled. But of course, that does come with a downside. If you are an airline, that means you have fewer seats to spread around these higher labor and fuel costs, which are not necessarily getting any better for the airlines. Now, I think the key question that you have to have as an investor is, will the demand still be there by the time that the system catches up to the interest that we're seeing in flying right now? I just heard from somebody the other day who said, you know what, I was going to travel, I just canceled it. I didn't want to deal with the hassle. And so I think the airlines need to be really careful here about the impact that some of these disruptions are going to have on travel demand. It's one thing to pay up for higher prices for flights when we've all been cooped up for several years. It's another to pay those prices and then see your flight repeatedly delayed, to get rebooked, to get canceled, to spend the night in the airport. I mean, that's a lot to ask the consumer to digest. And I think you have to be concerned about, how demand is going to hold up under those conditions.
Yeah, especially as we're dealing with a huge cost of living increase at the same time. Hey, Brooke, I'm really interested in the stock move. So Delta stock today down by about 8.5%. I'm surprised how surprised the market was at this.
I would agree with that. I am also surprised. To Guy's point, it is not like this has necessarily been a secret, the challenges that the airlines are having. I do think, you have to take Delta's results in the context of the inflation data that we got today, that, we are not necessarily seeing a peak in those consumer price pressures, which does sort of factor into that question that I'm talking about of how well can travel demand hold up. This has been relatively immune to inflation so far. I think that's a reflection of the pent-up demand that the consumer has for travel. This has not been an area where you could spend money for the better part of the last 2 years, and people are really eager to get out and travel. One thing I thought was interesting from Delta's results is they're still seeing stronger demand for those premium products, even relative to their coach. Now, this has been a trend across the industry, but clearly speaks to that desire to travel. But of course, the big question is, how long does that last?
Brooke, can they bring fares down with jet fuel this high?
I think it's going to be tricky for them to do that. And I also don't know if they're particularly incentivized to do that, given, some of the questions about the demand picture. I mean, I think they want to take the profits where they can right now. They're not having trouble pushing through higher fares at the moment. And so I don't really know what the incentive is to reverse that and bring them down.